Perception of authority. This is the psychology video project by Colton, Donnie, and Danny. We did our project on the perception of authority in uniforms and how it affects people and their decisions. Research questions. Would the appearance of a person in uniform change how people will react to an order or directive? Will they completely ignore you? Will some people be rude and question your request? Thank you.
So our experiment was asking people walking from the cafeteria to the classroom hall to use the other door. One trial was done wearing regular clothes like jeans and a sweatshirt, and the other trial was done wearing a uniform, which was a VCC polo and a clipboard.
Perception. Perception is the process or result of becoming aware of objects, relationships, and events by the means of the senses, which includes such activities as recognizing, observing, and discriminating. These activities enable organisms to organize and interpret the stimuli received into meaningful knowledge and to act in a coordinated manner. The look of a certain uniform can evoke certain attitudes and emotions towards others. Clothing conveys meaning and can impact a person mentally and how they physically act.
The 5 psychological concepts are biological, which is evolutionary, and social roles, personal consciousness. Humanistic is free will, deciding if you listen to an authority figure or not, knowing you can either listen or refuse. Psychodynamic is unconscious, respect for authority. Behavioral is how people behave when confronted with authority, and cognitive knowledge of authority figures gained. How it will help in the field is the experiment will help us understand that not being in a uniform, people are less likely to listen to your initial request or order. One given factor is that they are not going to take you as seriously as a person that is dressed in a uniform. Being in a uniform helps identify your position in which you stand for the service or role you may have. A uniform, for example, for an officer shows authority of law that you must abide by in certain given areas. Uniform changes the mood and demeanor of a person quickly given in the situation. Some cons to wearing a uniform may provoke emotions to some people. They may jump to a conclusion that you are a bad person because a few officers had made poor decisions in the past, so people look at you as if you are just like them. Some methodology problems. During this process of the experiment, we concluded that we could have chosen a better time than 8 a.m. due to people possibly having a later class hours. It was a little bit of a struggle trying to get enough people to randomly walk by in the lunchroom this early in the morning. Some people didn't even come our way. It was about an hour-long process to get 10 people for the experiment. If we were to do this again, we could maybe take a different approach and do it closer to noon, or maybe pick a different door to redirect someone. One thing we found is that being in a uniform, people are less apt to ignore and walk by during this experiment. Some people were even more apt to even talk to us a little bit longer during the experiment after we conducted it.
So the most important event in the history of our experiment was in the 1960s. Stanley Milgram went to Germany and he wanted to experiment with obedience and authority. Milgram took participants, and one would ask questions that were multiple choice, and the other would sit on another side of a curtain or in another room. The participant that was on the other side of the curtain or in another room was an actor, and the participant asking questions. If the person that was in another room got them wrong, they were asked to deliver a shock, and with every question wrong, the shock became stronger. What he found was that every time that he asked for them to administer a shock, just because he was wearing a lab coat and had a clipboard in his hand, they did it anyway, even to the point where the shock was considered fatal. He conducted this experiment to investigate whether Germans were particularly obedient to authority figures, because this is a common explanation for Nazi killings in World War II.